Alright, YouTube, it's time for another video. Driving around, trying to figure out more life stuff. I think I'm going to title this video. This video is more about all the right-wing infighting on the internet and how much problems they've caused in society, I would say. Not even so much for what they believe in, although I do have some concerns with right-wing economic beliefs and policies and amongst other things too, but it really just comes down to is this was mostly started in my mind about the whole Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens stuff, and how they Ben Shapiro advocated as this like free speech platform, and then as soon as Candace Owens criticizes the Israeli government, she gets kicked off. And both of these people I don't really listen too much. I don't really care that much about. But I do think it's fascinating how these two people, and right-wingers in general, especially right-wing YouTube and the internet as a whole, they owe all of their wealth, all of their fame, everything that they do, they owe it to Anita Sarkeesian, Zoe Quinn, the gamergate, primarily those female game developers, and then Anita Sarkeesian is far from a developer, but she's the feminist critic. And furthermore, I will also also mention this: they also owe all of their money to a lot of what I guess the internet would call the incel community. This has been on my mind for years now, but I do believe, and this is probably going to be, no one watches these videos anyway, so I don't think I have to worry about any controversial downvoting or hot takes or being yelled at, but it's true. I truly believe that a large chunk of the U.S. and now world economy revolves around primarily lonely males, and also the backlash women receive, most of which I would say is unjustified. Maybe some criticism of feminism and the left-wing women, it can be justified for sure, but a large chunk of it is so vitriolic and insane that it's hard to sometimes listen to the criticisms, but I'll try to be a sane critic because I'm more left-wing myself, but I will admit I do see a large chunk of our world's problems revolve around the men are too right-wing or too conservative, and the women are too left-wing or too liberal. And I do think the future of politics is shaping up to be a middle school dance where the boys are on one side of the room, the girls are on the other, and you're not really seeing good, healthy love and connections between the sexes, and it's causing, I think, a large chunk of the world that we live in and the problems of it. Okay, so to further expand on this, basically, the first time this came to my mind, it's been coming to my mind off and on for years, but, I just looked at the demographics of the people who listen to, Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, Joe Rogan, I guess that valuetainment is now the new big one. Also, of course, don't forget about those, like the Fresh and Fit and whatever podcasts, or, these like self-help or not, these like self-improvement gurus who, just criticize, 20-something-year-old women behavior, which again, some of these, things 20-something-year-old women, or now I would say it's extending into, women into their 30s and beyond, but yes, women's behavior as a whole can be criticized, just like how men's behavior as a whole can be criticized. However, I do think that we are at the point where, this is just getting out of hand with how often it's happening. do the people, again, these are primarily younger males who are in their late teens, maybe fresh out of high school, college age, maybe even now, I would say now, even my age, I'm early, really, really early 30s. I'm about to be 32. But even them, it is that demographic too, and it's like, are you really happy listening to this shit over and over again? How many more videos of Ben Shapiro do you need? I mean, you know what he stands for. You don't need his real take on the modern news. I mean, these guys are making millions of dollars at this point off of you not doing anything with your life and just listening and consuming digital media all day. The whole point of these videos and YouTube videos and channels is, there's a convenience to it, but there's also a massive addiction because of and how quickly you can just search for whatever and look at these these channels that are uploading multiple videos a day. You don't have enough time in your day to consume all of this shit. Why are you listening to all of it? It's not making you happy. Everyone's more lonely and miserable, and self-happiness indexes have all shrunk, and gone down over the past 20 years. And it's because of too much internet. But if you really think about, in the case of Ben Shapiro, I mean, the first time I ever really saw this guy was as relevant was right during the Gamergate fiasco of I guess you would say I think Gamergate specifically was 2015, but the Anita Sarkeesian stuff was a tad earlier, correct me if I'm wrong, like 2014. And the only reason, like Ben Shapiro first rose to popularity around that time because, I mean, even me, someone who doesn't search for this shit, it would pop up in YouTube algorithms of like, oh, look at this, wrecked feminist compilation, and it's just Ben Shapiro talking fast to, some like, he's well into his early to mid 30s by then, because that was probably around 2014, and I believe he's like an early 80s birth, so he would have been about 30, 31 or so. And he's like talking to like a 19-year-old about how the world, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean, it would take a really, really, studious 19-year-old to talk to, a 30 something in general about these things. I mean, yes, I do believe there are younger, fresh out of high school, early college age men and women who can debate with even, people who have, over a decade or 2 decades, over them just of experience, but it's a small amount. You're not just going to find that, every college person can do that. So, these were just like these, and I truly believe a large chunk of primarily men were watching these videos, who were probably males who felt lost in life and just wanted to see some sort of revenge fantasy. The same thing with the harassment of, Anita Sarkeesian. I remember very specifically when she announced her GoFundMe for her feminist frequency video compilation. At first, I believe, if I recall, she was actually supported quite a bit for her videos and making them. Now, she ended up being kind of a fraud in the sense that she really didn't put a lot of effort into these videos, from what I understand. I know there's a lot of controversies that she didn't play all the games, and so she didn't quite understand like the storyline of certain games. But the backlash that she eventually started getting from primarily 20-something-year-old, maybe even teens, maybe even middle school aged who are watching them. I mean, because middle schoolers are on YouTube. So I know senior citizens that are on YouTube. So I mean, everybody's on these platforms. Are the generations of like Gen X, Millennial, Alpha, Boomer, all these generations. These things are all starting to bleed into just one big mush, if you haven't noticed. But that's another topic for another time, probably. But a large chunk of younger people, 20-somethings, late teens, whatever, 30-somethings, would all watch these videos, and it caused their popularity to rise. It caused their subscriber counts to skyrocket. And I think now you're maybe finally starting to see these primarily males who have felt lost and alienated in the social media age, which, I mean, I think that is hurting men more than women, because I see a lot more women getting a lot more likes and retweets and follows and stuff, and I think everybody likes those things. There's studies that show that when you get a comment, when you get a like, when you get an upvote, You get dopamine sensations to your brain. So I think a lot of people, the number one reason why they feel left behind is because of social media. And I think it's hurting men more than women because it does seem like women can be a little bit more just, have like kind of a cute pose, and you'll get a lot of guys who are, trying to, at least shoot their shot, or girls who are yes queening or whatever. And that, at least, while it's a lot of hollow growth and hollow interaction and hollow likes, there's still like a quantifiable number associated with these likes, as, even if they are considered to be kind of hollow and not relevant or whatever. But yeah, I do believe that the right wing, especially the the internet right wing, that all of these websites were irrelevant before Gamergate, were irrelevant before Feminist Frequency, back in the mid 2010s. Nobody cared. All of these websites and YouTube channels owe all of their success to Anita Sarkeesian, to Zoe Quinn, and to, I know this word's hot. I guess, I don't think you're allowed to say this word, but I mean, no one's going to probably watch this video anyway, but the inkwell, or is that what they say? Is that like what the bypass is? I know I've watched some of these people's content because I love watching content of people who I don't agree with, and maybe does that make me a debate bro? I don't know. I'm trying not to do that, but you watch their content, and it's like none of these people gave a shit about right-wing YouTubers and stuff like that until Gamergate took off, and they were in the right wing were the first people to talk about this, while a lot of left-wingers would ignore it or mock it. But these things matter. I mean, you have to go where what people are valuing, you have to flock to cover. I mean, you can't ignore coverage of something because it seems childish, which, yeah, video games historically are associated with younger people, but that's going to change as the industry as a whole grows up. Video games in its, I guess in the modern era, there's like the big video game crash of 1983, and that kind of ushered in the modern era with the Nintendo Entertainment System, and now that reaches into PS5 or whatever, and Gamergate and Anita Sarkeesian and all those people were kind of that was, I guess, really really late PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, or PlayStation 4, Xbox One and stuff, that era. So hard to believe it's already been a decade since that time, and the Trump election, as controversial and as crazy as that cycle was, that's getting close to be a decade old too. It's hard to believe, but yes. And it seems like we're still talking about the same dumb shit. However, yeah, I do believe that all of these right-wing, and by the way, let's to segue it over to the more of the Fresh and Fit, that podcast and the Whatever podcast, and all these podcasts where the structure is they have kind of like some more naive, younger girls who want to be aspiring Instagram whatever models or whatever. And then they have these, one or two males who are usually like a decade plus older than these girls anyway. So it's like kind of weird to begin with. They're like just criticizing and chastising everything they do. And I will say, like, ladies, I don't think you should just be posting a ton of stuff on Instagram or TikTok and stuff like that all day. There's nothing wrong with having the occasional photo or update or whatever, but I do think women in general are a little too obsessed with social media and the internet. But men are too. And, I think people probably need to start observing that stuff. But, yeah, I mean, it does seem kind of like that, none of this stuff is really mattering that much. And, the right wing is just filled with grifters who want to just keep a bunch of lonely, isolated males. They kind of want to keep them lonelier and isolated, which generates more hatred, which kind of creates the problem. So yeah, I do believe that people need to go outside more. People need to do more things. People need to spend less time watching. Younger males need to stop watching this content. It's only making you miserable. Stop doing things that make you miserable. and then maybe you'll start to be happier with your life. But yeah, I mean, just think about it. Again, I mentioned all the podcasts. There's plenty more. Valuetainment. I brought up them briefly. I think they're the next current big grift. You see literally 20,000 people watching these podcasts, and it's like saying the same dumb stuff over and over and over again. People don't really. They're doing the thing. They're addicted to the thing that's making them miserable. They're addicted to the thing that's making them miserable. So my suggestion to younger right wing males, which there's more and more of them every day, every month, whatever. My suggestion to you is stop watching these YouTubers, the Steven Crowders, the Ben Shapiros, the Valuetainments, the Fresh and Fit, the whatever podcasts. Stop watching these things. You don't have to watch left-wing content. You don't have to become some communist socialist or whatever. I'm not that. I have aspects. There are aspects of capitalism that are perfectly reasonable. But how about you start doing other things than just play video games and listen to right-wing, center right-wing, or far right-wing stuff? That's my main suggestion. And because you think these people are fighting the good fight for you. And maybe there are some, people who are not grifting on the right. I do think there are left wing and there are right wing grifters. This is an example of a right wing grift. I would say a left wing grift would be, I don't know. I mean, I could go into detail on that later, but there are some left wing grifters out there for sure. Hassan's a good example. I think he's one of the biggest grifts out there. I mean, he's somebody who does not practice what he preaches, and is such a, he sits on his ass and does nothing, and thinks he has no influence, and yet, like, the only reason why his influence is starting to wane is because people are getting bored of his lack of trying new things, and it's like, the very thing that he could do to get his, message across and stronger, he does everything to avoid doing it. It's hilarious. But so I think he's a grifter. Even if I might align with him politically a little bit more than a Ben Shapiro, I still think he's a grift, and I would not give him any of your time or money. But yeah, the right wing grift is very prominent, and it's hurting younger males. You watching these podcasts over and over again is ruining your life. You do not have to do this. You don't have to be some hardcore left winger. You don't have to be I'm not forcing that. I do not want you to do that. I just want you to, I just want you to get off the internet, and I want you to try new hobbies and new things, because you spending all this time and energy is the only people that it's helping are these handful of right-wing podcasters, Fresh and Fits, Joe Rogan's Valuetainments. Joe Rogan seems more like center, honestly. I don't really think he's that awful. I just think he does promote some people that I think are a little too far right wing. But yeah, I mean, if you really think about it, Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, Fresh and Fit, Valuetainment, was Patrick David's his name, I believe. Candace Owens. All these men and women who are on, they owe so much money in like a dividend to males who are lonely, isolated, can't really, they don't have a dating life, their social life in general is non-existent, etc. They owe so much of their money to these people because nobody else listens to them, and this is causing a very destructive loop in our society. Just my thoughts, and I'm out.